My parents told me I was dead to them across a mahogany dining table. I'd eaten it every Sunday for 24 years, and they said it in front of a man whose only crime was loving me more than he loved money. 8 years of marriage, 2 businesses, and a life my mother once said would end in ruin. And Margaret Whitmore still didn't know the woman sitting in her guest room had spent those years building exactly the kind of wealth she'd once worshipped, the kind that came with receipts, legal documents, and a camera roll that never forgot a single thing anyone said. She raised her wine glass the night they came, back into my life, and said the words that confirmed what I'd always suspected. Family forgives, Rachel. Surely you've proven your point by now, she thought, offering me a seat at their table again was a gift. She hadn't counted on the fact that I'd stopped needing their approval the day my father said I'd made my choice and would have to live with the consequences, or that the brother they'd spent 8 years protecting from those same consequences had just run out of people willing to save him from himself. My parents had been planning this reconciliation for weeks. The phone call, the dinner invitation, the carefully worded apology that never actually named what they were apologizing for. They told me it was time to heal as a family. What they meant was my brother Carter needed $240,000 in 90 days, and I was the only person left with both the money and the last name. I walked into that house with my camera bag over my shoulder, the same bag I'd carried to 300 weddings, 50 corporate events, and every moment in my life worth remembering. My mother thought it was a purse. My father thought I'd come alone. Neither of them thought to ask why a woman who'd been declared dead to them 8 years ago would show up to dinner with a recording device she'd never once forgotten how to use. What happened in that dining room didn't just end a reconciliation. It ended the story my parents had been telling themselves about the daughter who'd thrown her life away and the son who'd simply been unlucky. And when the truth came out, captured in 4K with timestamps they couldn't dispute, the only person who ended up ruined was the one they'd spent 8 years protecting from ever having to face the bills he'd signed in someone else's name. Welcome back to Revenge Camera Stories, where the truth develops in real time, and the people who tried to erase you from the family portrait learn exactly what they excluded. If you've ever been told you're dead to someone until the moment they needed something from you, this story is for you. Drop a comment, tell me where you're watching from, and hit subscribe, because you'll want to see how this exposure turned out. But let me back up 8 years before that dinner, before the phone call, before my mother's voice went soft with a warmth I hadn't heard since I was 12. I need to tell you who I was the morning my father declared me dead, because that's the version of me they thought would come crawling back. I met David Chen in a coffee shop, where I was editing wedding photos on a laptop held together with electrical tape and hope. He was sitting 2 tables over, drafting architectural plans on graph paper because his firm's software had crashed and the client meeting was in 4 hours. We started talking because his pen rolled off his table and stopped at my feet. And by the time I handed it back, I'd already noticed 3 things. He had kind eyes, worn shoes, and the particular type of focused calm that comes from someone who'd learned to solve problems without panicking. We dated for 8 months. He met my parents exactly once, at a dinner my mother hosted specifically, to determine whether David was suitable. Suitable meant money, legacy, country club membership, the right last name. David showed up in a suit he'd borrowed from his roommate, brought flowers he'd picked himself from the community garden near his apartment, and answered my father's question about his career trajectory by saying, honestly, that he hoped to start his own sustainable architecture firm within 5 years if he could save enough for the licensing, fees, and initial insurance costs. My mother's smile didn't reach her eyes for the rest of the evening. My father didn't say a word during dessert. And when David left, my mother sat me down in the same living room where she'd once thrown me, a debutante party, and said, "Rachel, sweetheart, you're 26 years old. You can't actually be serious about a man who grows his own flowers because he can't afford a florist." I told her I was very serious. Serious enough that I'd already said yes when David had asked me to marry him 3 nights earlier, kneeling in that same community garden, with a ring he'd designed himself because custom was cheaper than retail, and he knew exactly what I'd love. My father gave me one chance to reconsider. He said if I married David, I'd be choosing a life of struggle, instability, and disappointment, that the Whitmore name came with expectations I was about to abandon, that I'd regret it when I was 35 and realizing my friends were summering in the Hamptons while I was clipping coupons. I married David 4 months later in a courthouse ceremony with 2 witnesses and a photographer friend who shot the whole thing on film as a wedding gift. My parents didn't come. They sent a lawyer instead, with a letter informing me that I was no longer welcome at family events, that my trust fund had been reallocated to my younger brother Carter, and that unless I came to my senses and annulled the marriage within 6 months, I should consider myself no longer a part of the Whitmore family. The letter ended with a sentence I'd memorize without trying. "You've made your choice, Rachel. Now you'll live with the consequences." I didn't annul the marriage. I didn't call. I didn't beg. I took my cameras, the used Honda David and I had bought together, and the last $1,800 in my personal checking account, and I started the life my mother said would end in ruin. Here's the part that's hard to admit. For the first 2 years, I thought maybe they were right. David and I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat where the heat only worked 3 days a week. I shot weddings every weekend and edited photos every night while David worked 60-hour weeks at the firm and freelanced. On the side, drafting plans for anyone who'd pay him. We ate pasta 4 nights a week. We didn't go on vacation. I wore the same black dress to every client, meeting for 18 months, because it was the only one professional, enough to meet brides in. But something happened in year 3 that my mother's country club friends would never understand. We started winning. Not lottery winning, not trust fund winning. The slow, compound interest kind of winning that comes from 2 people who know how to work, how to save, and how to build something together without waiting for permission. David's sustainable architecture design started getting noticed. A small firm hired him full-time with a salary that let us move into a 2-bedroom. Then a developer commissioned him for a mixed-use building that ended up in an industry magazine. Within 4 years, he'd started his own firm with 2 partners, all of them pooling resources and splitting equity fairly. I built my photography business the same way. One wedding led to a referral. One referral led to a corporate client. One corporate client led to a contract shooting for a national hospitality brand. By year 5, I wasn't just shooting weddings. I was directing photo campaigns, hiring second shooters, teaching workshops. I'd built a name in the industry that had nothing to do with Whitmore and everything to do with the fact that I could catch the moment everyone else missed. We didn't do it by inheriting anything. We did it by working 7 days a week for 5 years straight, by living below our means, by saying no to things that looked good and yes to things that built equity. And somewhere in year 6, I checked our combined net worth on a spreadsheet. David had been quietly updating every month and realized we'd crossed a threshold. My parents would recognize we were wealthy, not by accident, not by inheritance, by choice. I didn't call them to tell them. I didn't send a Christmas card with a photo of our new house. I'd stopped performing for their approval the day my father's lawyer had handed me that letter. But I also didn't forget. I saved every email my mother sent to my old address, the ones that went unanswered, the ones that started appearing around year 4, wondering if maybe we could talk, asking if I'd be willing to meet for coffee. Nothing heavy, just a conversation. I never responded, not because I was angry, because I'd learned that people who love you don't make you audition for a second chance. They don't declare you dead, and then ask politely if you'd like to be resurrected, when it's convenient for them. Then, 3 months ago, my mother called from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but I was sitting in my car outside a venue, waiting for a bride to finish getting ready, and something made me pick up. "Rachel," her voice cracked, on my name like she'd been holding it in her mouth for 8 years, and had forgotten how it tasted. "It's your mother. Please don't hang up." I didn't hang up. I sat there, engine off, phone pressed to my ear, and waited. "I know I don't have the right to ask this," she said, and I could hear her crying. Real or performed, I couldn't tell yet, but I need to see you. Your father and we've made mistakes, terrible mistakes, and I think it's time we fix them. I asked her what had changed. She said time had changed. Perspective. The realization that family mattered more than pride. She said they wanted to apologize, properly in person over dinner, just the 4 of us. Her, Dad, me, and David if I wanted to bring him. I told her I'd think about it. She said they'd be honored if I'd come to the house, that she'd make my favorite meal, that my father had something he wanted to say to me, that he should have said 8 years ago. I hung up and sat in that parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. Then I called David. I told him what my mother had said. He was quiet for a long time before he asked the question. I'd been avoiding, "Do you want to go?" I didn't know. Part of me, the part that was still 26 and sitting in that living room being told, I'd regret everything. Wanted to walk into that house and show them exactly how wrong they'd been. Another part of me, the part that had built a life without them, didn't see the point in proving anything to people who'd already decided I wasn't worth keeping. David said, "If you go, I'm coming with you. And if something feels wrong, we leave." I told him I'd think about it. Then I did something I hadn't done in 8 years. I looked up my brother Carter on social media. What I found didn't surprise me. It confirmed everything I'd suspected. Carter's life looked perfect in pictures. Expensive restaurants, charity galas, a penthouse apartment, with a view that cost more per month than most people made in a year. But if you looked closer, if you knew what to look for, you could see the edges fraying. The designer suits worn in every photo for 6 months straight. The same watch in every shot because there wasn't a collection, just the one. The captions that mentioned new opportunities and exciting ventures, but never named a single employer or actual business. Carter had been living on my parents' money for 8 years. And if my mother was calling me now, after 8 years of silence, it meant one of two things. Either they'd run out of money to give him, or he'd run out of ways to spend it without consequences catching up. I called my mother back the next day and told her I'd come to dinner. She cried again, thanked me, said she couldn't wait to see me. I didn't tell her I'd be bringing more than David. I'd be bringing the same instinct that had kept me working when everyone said I'd fail. The instinct that said when something sounds too easy, it's because someone's hiding the hard part. The dinner was set for a Saturday 3 weeks out. I spent those 3 weeks the way I'd spent every important shoot of my career. Preparing. I told David we'd go, we'd listen, but we wouldn't agree to anything that night, no matter what they asked, no matter how reasonable it sounded. Then I did something my parents would never expect from the daughter they'd declared dead. I called a lawyer, not for a lawsuit, for advice. I explained the situation. Estranged parents, sudden reconciliation, 8 years of silence. I asked what kinds of things I should be careful about. She gave me a list that made my stomach drop. Co-signing loans, guaranteeing debts, transferring assets, agreeing to be listed as a business partner or financial backer without full disclosure. She said people don't usually reconcile because they've had a change of heart. They reconcile because they've run out of options. I thanked her and hung up. Then I charged every camera battery I owned. The night of the dinner, I dressed carefully. Not to impress, to document. I wore a blazer with deep pockets, the kind I use on shoots when I need to carry memory cards and backup batteries. I packed my smallest camera, a mirrorless Sony that shoots 4K video and fits in a purse. I set it to voice-activated recording and slipped it into my bag with the lens angled up. David asked if I was sure I wanted to record them. I told him I'd spent 8 years shooting moments people wanted to remember. This was a moment I wanted to be able to prove. We drove to my parents' house in silence, the same colonial estate I'd grown up in, white columns and a circular driveway that still smelled like old money and new mulch. My mother opened the door before we'd even reached the porch. She looked older, thinner. Her smile was the same, but something behind it had shifted. Something tired I didn't recognize. "Rachel." She hugged me before I could decide whether to let her. "Oh, sweetheart, you look beautiful." "And David," she turned to him, and for a moment I thought she might actually apologize. Instead, she said, "Thank you for coming. It means the world." My father was waiting in the dining room. He stood when we entered, and for the first time in my life I saw him hesitate. He didn't know whether to shake my hand or hug me. He settled for a nod and a quiet, "Rachel, it's good to see you." We sat. My mother brought out dinner, the same meal she'd made for every birthday. I'd had until I was 26, roasted chicken, garlic potatoes, green beans, almondine. She'd remembered. I didn't know if that made it better or worse. The first 20 minutes were small talk. Safe questions about David's work, about my photography, about whether we'd traveled anywhere interesting. My mother laughed at all the right moments. My father nodded approvingly. When David mentioned a project that had won a design award, it felt almost normal. Almost. Then my father set down his fork and looked at me the way he used to. Look at quarterly earnings. Reports. Direct. Assessing. Ready to pivot to the ask. "Rachel, your mother and I owe you an apology." I waited. "We were unfair to you 8 years ago. We let our expectations cloud our judgment. You were young, and we thought we were protecting you. But we see now that we were wrong. You've built a life, a good one, and we're proud of you." My mother reached across the table and took my hand. "We've missed you, sweetheart, so much, and we'd like to be part of your life again. If you'll let us." I looked at David. He was watching them the way he watched structural plans, looking for the load-bearing points, the places where weight didn't distribute properly. "What changed?" I asked. My father blinked. "I'm sorry?" 8 years. You didn't call. You didn't write. You didn't come to our wedding or acknowledge any of the messages. I sent the first year. What changed?" My mother's grip on my hand tightened. "We realized we were wrong." "When?" She hesitated, just for a second. But I'd spent 15 years photographing people, and I knew what hesitation looked like when someone was deciding which version of the truth to tell. "Does it matter?" my father asked. "We're here now. We're asking for a second chance." I pulled my hand back gently. "It matters to me." My father glanced at my mother. She nodded, almost imperceptibly, and he sighed. "Your brother's in some trouble." There it was, the hard part they'd been hiding. "What kind of trouble?" "Financial trouble. He made some investments that didn't pan out. He's in a difficult position, and we've helped as much as we can, but you're out of money," I finished. My mother's eyes went sharp. "We're not out of money, Rachel. We're being responsible. Carter needs to learn to solve his own problems, but he needs help getting to a place where he can do that. And we thought, since you've done so well, and since he's your brother, you thought I'd pay his debts. We thought you'd want to help family," my father said. "The way family helps each other." I let that sentence sit in the air for a moment. The same way I'd let his lawyer's letter sit on my kitchen counter 8 years ago before. I'd finally thrown it away. "How much does he need?" $240,000. I didn't react. I'd learned a long time ago that the worst thing you can do in a negotiation is let someone see the number land. "What did he spend it on?" "That's not really. If you want me to consider helping, I need to know what I'm helping with." My father's jaw tightened, but he answered. "He got involved in a cryptocurrency venture. It was supposed to be a sure thing. It wasn't. And now there are people expecting returns he can't deliver." "Is it legal?" "Technically." "What does that mean?" My mother jumped in. "It means Carter made a mistake, but he's not a criminal, Rachel. He just needs a bridge loan. Something to get him through the next 90 days, while he sorts out his next opportunity." I looked at both of them. My mother, who'd taught me to set a table and told me I'd ruin my life. My father, who'd walked me down the aisle at Cotillion and declared me dead 4 months later. And I realized, sitting in that dining room, that they hadn't changed at all. They'd just run out of options. "Let me think about it," I said. My mother's relief was instant. "Of course. Take all the time you need. We're just so grateful you're even considering." "I need to see the paperwork." My father frowned. "What paperwork?" "Whatever Carter signed. Whatever he owes. If I'm going to help, I need to see exactly what I'm getting into." They exchanged a look I recognized from childhood, the one that meant they were deciding how much truth I could handle. "We can get that to you," my father said. "Good. Send it to my lawyer. I'll have her review it." My mother's smile faltered. "Your lawyer?" "Rachel, this is family. We don't need lawyers for family." "You sent a lawyer to my wedding," I said quietly. "I think we've established that family and lawyers aren't mutually exclusive in this house." The dinner ended 20 minutes later. My mother packed leftovers I didn't ask for. My father walked us to the door and said he'd have Carter's paperwork sent over by Monday. I smiled, thanked them for dinner, and walked to the car with David's hand steady on my back. We didn't speak until we were on the highway. Then David asked, "Are you okay?" "No," I said, "but I will be." That night, I pulled the camera from my bag and uploaded the footage to my laptop. 4 hours of dinner conversation, crystal clear, time-stamped, backed up to 3 separate drives. Then I did what I'd done at every wedding I'd ever shot. I reviewed the footage for the moments that mattered. I found 7. The first was my mother saying, "Carter needs to learn to solve his own problems," followed immediately by asking me to solve them for him.